Right, Bev, ready to go live?
Yeah, ready. I think.
Perfect. Sure?
Yeah.
That'll do.
Go for it.
Hey, good evening.
It's Friday.
I'm Andy.
And I'm Devs.
Stay tuned.
It's Codes of the Unknown.
Ooh. No, forgot that bit then. Oh, give me 1 minute.
All right. What are you looking for?
Is Nathan allowed out of his box this week?
I don't know. Maybe you should go look for him.
Right, I'll be back straight after this.
Yes.
Seven, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Hello.
Good evening.
So, tonight we are joined with the one and only Stephen Myers. So,
Welcome.
Good evening, or good afternoon in your case.
Thank you for having me on your show.
Yeah, it's great
You're very
to have you
welcome.
on. So would you like to start by giving everyone a little bio about yourself and how you started?
Well, I'm an author and researcher and have written 2 books about the Great Pyramid. And how I got started was just like everyone, it seems like I had an interest in, ancient people and ancient cultures and civilizations. But I was much more interested in the technology involved. I have a very technical background, and I'm not interested in so much as the pharaohs and their religion, but in the technical aspects of the construction project known as the Great Pyramid. So if someone has that interest, they would, of course, nowadays read books by Egyptologists, and they talk about a big ramp and all of that.
Yeah.
So so that I thought to myself, well, that's a great idea. All I need to do is see their demonstrations. But the truth about Egyptology is they don't really demonstrate very much. So I continued my research and read a lot of the more far out books. But ultimately, I read a book called Pharaoh's Pump, written by Edward Kunkel, privately published here in the United States.
All right.
And it talked about how the Great Pyramid was built and why. And then ultimately, I continued that direction of research and wrote a couple of books on the same theme that he wrote.
Yeah. Cool. So your latest, sorry, can't find it now. So right, computer's going slow. So on the books, there was one where, it's not this one. This one. You said where there was water pumps used for moving the rocks, was it?
Well, my first book is titled Lost Technologies of the Great Pyramid. And it is the focus of that book is how the Great Pyramid was built. And we think that the Great Pyramid was built using water locks.
Yeah.
Like those in the Panama Canal, the Erie Canal here in the United States, many canals in England as well. But they used water locks and barges and were able to assemble the Great Pyramid with ease, if you will. And they built it level by level from the bottom up, including the casing stones. The casing stones that remain at the Great Pyramid are cemented together watertight with a really strong bonding agent. So when the first level of casing stones were set in place around the outside, they fill that enclosure, if you will, with water, and that made a pond. And they had stones on barges come from the Nile River all the way up water locks to that right into that pond, and then move the stones off of the barges into the pond itself. And when that pond was filled with stone, the first layer of the Great Pyramid was assembled. And that process goes systematically, from the bottom up all the way up to the capstone. So that's essentially how we think the Great Pyramid was assembled.
Yeah. So do you know why the reason behind building them?
Well, that's probably a more important question than how it was built.
Yeah.
But the why, that's very important. And first of all, it's a big construction project. There's a lot to it. It's big building.
Yeah.
45 stories tall. Took a lot of that civilization's resources and high cost of labor and everything else to build it. So it had a high cost.
Yeah.
So its purpose must have been at least as big as the investment, return on investment, if you will. So anyone that has a return on investment, which is why that's very small, then that's a wrong answer. But we think that the Great Pyramid was infrastructure for the civilization that built it. It was infrastructure that provided prosperity for the people that built it. It wasn't built to tell us they knew pi, anything like that. But it was built to transform the desert into a garden and to transform poverty into leisure. And that's what infrastructure does. The power grid, or even the sewer system, highways are all part of infrastructure. Hydroelectric dams, they all have a purpose, which is to transform poverty into leisure or to improve the civilization. So we think that the Great Pyramid was this prosperity, this infrastructure, and it provided prosperity by being a water pump.
Right. So with the other pyramids, not just the ones in Egypt, the other pyramids around the world.
There are pyramids around the world.
Yeah. So do you think they was built in the same way?
I don't think every pyramid structure building was built in the same way. I don't think that that's ancient and modern. There's a big pyramid in Las Vegas here in the United States, but it wasn't built the same way. Skyscrapers aren't built the same way.
No.
Hydroelectric dams aren't built the same way. But my research is specific to the Great Pyramid.
Right. Okay. Fair enough. So, got first two questions for you. So this is from Justin Apple. Do you think they manipulated sound frequency to move the stones?
I do not.
Okay.
To move a 70-ton stone with sound, you would need so much energy that you would have to have a hydroelectric dam the size of the High Aswan Dam. It's you can move small things with sonic vibrations and all of that.
Yeah.
But the scalability has not been demonstrated. It's I can move a potato chip by just blowing on it.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that the 70-ton stones were moved by people blowing on it. So no, I don't think that sonic vibration or a magic wand or anything like that was used. So I think the Great Pyramid was built in the real world by real people who really were required to move very heavy objects. And that doesn't include sonic vibration.
So you reckon it was like just pure manual labor?
Well,
basically.
Water locks, if you will. It's so it was not strong back muscles by any means. So they had a series of water locks and moved these stones effortlessly and fast. So that's part of the genius of the original builders who built the Great Pyramid.
Right. Next question is from Joe Weeks. Hi, Steve. Is it true, as they say, that even today we can't build them?
No, that's incorrect.
Okay.
There's not a single component that can't be built now using modern machinery. You ever run your hand across a granite countertop? You know, it's quite smooth, very large cuts, and all of that. So no, there's no single component that can't be moved using modern moving materials, or make a component using modern materials. But Egyptologists say the extreme precision of the stone cutting was accomplished using hand tools. And they're wrong. That's absolutely wrong. It's never been demonstrated. Egyptology cannot make a single casing stone. It's beyond the capability of their science. So using the methods that Egyptology says were used, it can't be done. But using modern machinery, yes.
Yeah.
You could build another Great Pyramid if you wanted to, but you'd have to have a really big return on investment to justify it.
Yeah. So how long would it take, you think, would it have taken to build the pyramids?
If it was done in the manner Egyptologist says it was done, then the time frame would be infinity. Egyptology has been a science for 200 years, since the French savants of Napoleon entered Egypt, and that's the start of whatever you want to call Egyptology.
Yeah.
But Egyptology can't make a single casing stone. They can't make a single surface of a casing stone. They can't move a stone on and off of a barge, a full-size stone. And a 70-ton payload it weighs about as much as a locomotive, if you will, a railroad locomotive. They've never moved a weight of that size 1 inch. So if Egyptology was responsible for building the Great Pyramid, it would never be built. But using water locks, like the Erie Canal, which was built in the 1830s, that canal moved and lifted the weight of the Great Pyramid in a time frame of 2 years. So water locks are fast, they're justified, they are the technology of choice in the 21st century. The Panama Canal was recently expanded, and they didn't use sonic vibration to move the heavy payloads.
Right.
They made another series of water locks that were larger. So it's the 21st century's choice for moving our heaviest payloads.
Excellent. Right. Sorry, next question is from Nickname. What got you interested in the pyramid research? Where did you start?
Well, I've always been interested in technology. I'm a ham radio operator, first class FCC license, and a whole host of other things that are of a technical nature. So when I studied World War II in high school, I didn't care about the generals or anything, but I wanted to know about the battleships and the airplanes, the range of the airplanes, their payloads.
Yeah.
So I collect antique gasoline motors, so it's a period authentic technology, the old one-lungers, if you will, the hit and miss engines. I've got a number of those. And but if a person likes history and technology, they'll probably end up having an interest in the Great Pyramid, because it's a 45-story skyscraper that was built in very ancient times, and it exhibits a lot of features that indicate some very high technology was involved.
Right. Just another question, going back to using the water locks. If it was so effective then, would we be using it now?
The water lock idea?
Yeah.
Yeah. We certainly use water locks in modern times. Again, the Three Gorges Dam in China, the largest structure in the world now, that they were building. It also incorporates a series of water locks for transportation, and again, the Panama Canal was recently expanded, just a decade ago, because water locks are so important, so efficient. They're not moving these heavy payloads and ships with sonic vibration or anything, because it's not the way to go. It's not a technology that's workable, if you will. But water locks certainly are. We think that there was a series of water locks from the Nile up to the building site, and even up the face of the Great Pyramid, a flight of water locks, and they built the pyramid again with ease.
Right. So, one more question from Professor Tim Brennan. So, are we talking about ancient alien interventions?
Well, we're actually talking about just a construction project, but there are ideas about ancient aliens, and some associate that with the Great Pyramid, because in effect, it's an ultra modern looking structure with no ornamentation, but it was created in distant antiquity. So people say, well, it's got these features of high technology, so it must be associated with ancient aliens. But to say that is to say that ancient people weren't smart enough to build the Great Pyramid. So it's a two-edged sword, a double-sided coin, if you will. If you say one thing, that it was ancient aliens, you're also saying, or at least implying, that people couldn't do it. And if people could do it, then then you don't need the ancient aliens. So I don't. I give credit. I give credit and honor to our species, distant past. Those people were geniuses and understood aspects of physics and the world around them that resulted in their creation of some very high technologies, large-scale stone cutting, and a number of other things that resulted in the construction of the Great Pyramid.
Yeah. So do you think that? Oh, sorry.
That's right. I've just got a couple of questions in a minute.
All right. Do you think that we lost any of that knowledge from the
certainly
technology?
Oh, certainly. There's been a lot of things that that we know about now that ancient people knew about a long time ago. Aspirin is a medicine that we use, but it's derived from leaves from trees in South America.
Right.
So the witch doctor would tell people, go chew a couple of leaves to help with your headache. But now in modern times, we've synthesized that into aspirin. So the ancient people knew so much, I'm certainly about medicine. They had C-sections and birth control. In South America, they had brain surgery and a whole host of things. So ancient people probably didn't know a lot of things we know, like about phones, how to install an app. Ancient people didn't know that, but they knew a lot of things about physics that modern man is not caught up with yet.
Right. Sorry, Deb.
No, my question was, the pyramids, are they all on one level when you go in, or is there something underneath as well?
Well, the Great Pyramid of all pyramids has the most complex interior. Sir Flanders Petrie, when he was inside it, said he was like being inside a machine. Right. And it had several passages and chambers inside the structure, and also passages in the solid bedrock, and a chamber, the subterranean chamber below the Great Pyramid. Right. So it doesn't look like a tomb, let me put it that way. Yeah. So all of these chambers and passages and complexity, and long open passages that have doors on pivots, didn't protect the pharaoh's mummy or treasure. So Egyptologists just out of the blue come up with the idea, well, the Great Pyramid is a tomb, but it doesn't look like a tomb. So they must have had a big change of plans several times. And that's why it doesn't look like a tomb. Well, they just made that up. But no, it's not a tomb. The original builders didn't make it to be a tomb. And but yeah, it's in effect a lot of passages and chambers inside the Great Pyramid and below.
Right. And my other question was, I once remember either watching or reading something that said that they'd found a tunnel, only a small tunnel with a metal door and a handle, but it opened from the other side, and they've never been able to find. Was that true? And have they been able to find out how to open it?
Yeah, I think you're talking about the Queen's Chamber vents.
Yes.
They're about 8 inches square. I know you guys don't do inches anymore.
No, I do. Yeah,
Oh,
I
yeah.
do.
Yeah, you guys do. Yeah. Most everyone doesn't. We still do, but yeah, about 8 inches square, too small to crawl through, with several bends. And if you keep going, they had a little robot that crawled up there, and there is it's blocked, and there are some copper pins or parts of it in this door. So then they drilled a hole through it, and just a little ways farther there's another blockage. So yeah, it's quite interesting. A lot of new research associated with the Great Pyramid, and that's some of it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Got one more question from Nickname. What reason was the pyramid built for? What was it?
Well, I think it was built for the same reason a hydroelectric dam was built, or a nuclear power plant, or even roads, and as for infrastructure. We have roads, but then what that does is allow us to go to the store and buy stuff. And they build a hydroelectric dam, but then we can run our computers and have shows like this, or we can have lights and that type of thing. So that's what the Great Pyramid did. Instead of having toil, they could use the pumped water for irrigation, and instead of using, like buckets or whatever, and they could use the pumped water to power machinery instead of using your back. One person can produce at a sustained workload about 1/10 of 1 horsepower. So that's not very much in terms of work, but if you could use some water, you could certainly power heavy machinery. That's how the Industrial Revolution was started, with water power. So we think the Great Pyramid, using this pumped water, was a power plant, if you will, powered machinery of all sorts. And the Giza Plateau was more of a industrial park or science center at first than it was a graveyard.
Yeah. So if it was built before the Egyptians, and then they started using it for a tomb,
there's scholarly
the pharaohs, I should say.
Yeah, there's scholarly debate as to when the Great Pyramid was built, and that debate is largely driven by Egyptology's failure to do any type of demonstrations. They can't demonstrate how that civilization, the Egyptian civilization, could make a Great Pyramid casing stone. No one on earth can make one of those. And if a component of a building can't be made by a specific civilization, then probably that civilization didn't build that building. So either Egyptology is quite wrong in much of what they say, which I think they are, or the Great Pyramid could have been built before dynastic Egypt, if you will. Some say it was built 36,000 years ago, and there's a whole host of ideas, but that's a possibility. It's not the focus of my research, but the Great Pyramid could be like pre-Diluvian, if I can use that word, pre-flood, or pre-last catastrophe, from a different civilization or possibly from Atlantean technology.
Yeah.
But to me, that's not as interesting as it should. You would think it should be. So, and the reason why I say that is because let's say that we were able to find out absolutely for sure that the Great Pyramid was built 10,000 years ago. Let's say that was an absolute something that was discovered that was true. The very next thing you would ask is, well, how did they make it? And why would they do such a thing? So I've kind of cut to the chase, if you will, and focus on those two aspects of the Great Pyramid, how and why.
Yeah. So going back to my previous question about lost technology, the tools that we use for cutting the rock or the stone, are we still able to, what's the word, use them now? Do we know what tools we used?
Well, we know what tools we use in modern technology, certainly. And we use those tools to make some extremely large scale precision stone cutting. But those tools use, like 440 volt alternating current motors and diamond tipped saw blades and that type of thing.
Yeah.
But we do not know, or let me put it this way. My understanding of ancient stone cutting is superior to all of Egyptology's understanding, because I know that the large scale, extremely precise stone cutting cannot be accomplished by hand. And they say it was, and no one can do it. No one believes that anymore, even though every book Egyptologists write, they show the guy with a hammer and chisel, or pounders, and they show the pounder, pound, 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 big head, pound. But there's no demonstrations of it. It can't, the extreme precision cannot be accomplished that way. So that's a foundational error that much of what else they say is built on. That's why I harp on it so much.
Yeah. So what do you say was used for building them?
What I say was used by the ancient builders is a lost technology. That's why it's the first part of the.
Yeah.
We don't know. Let me put it this way. Egyptologists know. They know it was hand tools, but the rest of us don't know the technology that they used. So we know the results of the technology. A casing stone is 7 by 5 feet on a surface.
Yeah.
And the surface is within 1/50th of an inch.
Wow.
So that can't be done with hand tools.
No.
So, Egyptology is the only science that abhors the scientific method. I've read books about cows jumping over the moon. I'm sure you guys have heard about that. You can read about it in literature, and there's ancient myths about it, but no one believes it because it cannot be demonstrated with a demonstration.
No.
On the other hand, Egyptologists talk about the cutting with hand tools, and the extreme precision, but somehow they can get away with it with no demonstrations. I don't know how they get away with it, but it's not going to last forever.
No. I've got another question from Tim Brennan, which is, if the Great Pyramid was a hydro plant, why is it shaped like a pyramid?
Oh, thank you. That's an excellent question. We think that there was hydrostatic force inside the Great Pyramid during construction. It was built level by level with this pond, and the pyramid shape is like, in effect, 4 dams backed up to each other. Generally they're called gravity dams, the long straight ones that have a face that looks just, if you want to know what the Great Pyramid looked like with the casing stones, go look at one of those big gravity dams. There's a big one near where I live called the Grand Coulee Dam. and it is about at the same angle as the Great Pyramid. So that's why. So if you can imagine 4 dams backed up to one another with water impounded behind them, we have a video series on our website you can watch for free describing the how the Great Pyramid was built. And we one video is specifically about that question, why the Great Pyramid is shaped like a pyramid.
Yeah.
And but those videos have a lot of computer generated animations. You can get to those by going to our website at thepump.org. So hopefully people will visit that website.
Yeah.
There's a lot more information than
Well, I've put all the information you sent to me. It's all in the description. So all the links are in there. So if anyone wants to click on them,
good.
So I forgot where I was at then. Sorry about that.
Oh, about the shape of the Great Pyramid.
Oh, yeah, the shape.
Yeah. So if you can imagine that, and the construction process is very fascinating, and so it's. I hope they visit that video series and take a look.
Yeah. So do you think that? So if they was moving it along the rivers to build the pyramid, do you think there's water nearer to where the pyramids are now that aren't there, obviously, that have dried up since?
Well, it appears dry right now around the Great Pyramid area and Egypt in general, if you can put it that way. Egypt's quite dry. The course of the Nile has varied quite a bit through the eons, if you will, not just 5,000 years, but even before that. Some have suggested the Nile was even on the other side of the Great Pyramid in distant antiquity.
Yeah.
So, yes. So and much earlier, that whole area was more of a savanna, if you will, than a desert. But they do have that great big Nile River, and certainly the lifeblood of the whole nation of Egypt. But yeah, they were able to supply water to the Giza plateau, and the how they did that is under scholarly debate. Some say there was a cold water geyser in the charm. There's a excavation right in front of the Great Pyramid that's been covered up for a long time. Some say from the ancient Lake Maurice, which still exists on the western bank of the Great Pyramid, and there's other explanations as to how water got to the construction site, if you will. So even Christopher Dunn, another author who wrote the Giza power plant, contends that the original builders had a source of water at the Giza plateau.
Right. So another question, this is from me. What do you think everyone's fascination is of the Great Pyramid? Why was so many, I suppose, famous and inventive people wanting to know so much about them?
Well, the Great Pyramid is if I can put it this way, an oopart. It's an out of place artifact. It's something that doesn't fit our understanding of ancient people, especially if you think that people were primitive way back, and they became less primitive, and then we have our civilizations. But I think modern mankind might be one of the most primitive civilizations that's ever existed. But and it's unadorned with any type of ornamentation, none, inside or out. It's stark in its beauty, and so it's just so unusual. Again, it was the tallest building in the world for 5,000 years. Also, the size of the components are beyond human scale to move in any type of efficient manner, if you will. To move stones that big without handling scars, if you will.
Yeah.
And the huge magnitude of it, it's massive, massive, massive. If you take all the cathedrals in Europe and take them all apart and stack the stones together, it's not as much as the Great Pyramid.
Right.
And people have wondered about how it was done and what would possess a civilization to do that. And especially when they have in mind the ideas that it was created for a pharaoh's carcass or something like that. So it has the fascination of all people, the Great Pyramid, in one form or another. And
Right.
I advise anyone, if they get the chance to go to Egypt, do so, because it's a place like no other.
Yeah.
I've got a question, another question. I don't know if it's relevant if you're looking into this anyway, but I wanted to know what the significance of the Sphinx is.
Well, the Sphinx is a rock outcropping that was carved to look like a Sphinx, and it's certainly not part of the Great Pyramid. And it is, I would guess, it's part of either the state religion, and state religions are to control people.
Yeah, we know
and
that.
Or it's part of the state, either a political or religious statement, and it's there. Maybe it served a very powerful leader to have it carved, but some say it was recarved, maybe even a number of times, because the head is out of proportion to the rest of the body.
Yeah.
It could have been, some other type of a mythical creature in very distant past. So, it's certainly an enigma, the Sphinx, and it's right there. I mean, it's within a walking distance from the Great Pyramid to the Sphinx. And it's magnificent. It's a wonderful sculpture.
Yeah.
But water erosion.
I wonder if it's some sort of like guardian, like a symbol of a guardian.
Oh, it's definitely it's a symbol or something like that, or political. Just like a flag is a symbol. A nation's flag, but it's something like that. But in terms of like a functional purpose, other than societal or for control, if you will, it doesn't. It's not like a machine or anything. So, but it's beautiful.
It is.
It really is. So.
Yeah. Thank you for answering my question.
But people wonder about that. They say, well, if that's a religious building, the Sphinx, a structure for some religious purpose, then what's right next to it is must also be part of the religious, necropolis there. So, but that's not necessarily true. The Grand Coulee Dam here in the United States is a great big dam, and it has a bust, larger than life bust right there of President Roosevelt, who helped fund that project. But that doesn't mean it's like a religious. The dam isn't religious or anything, or political or anything like that. But it pays homage to Roosevelt. So that's probably what the Sphinx is for, is to pay homage to some leader that needed a needed a big statue.
One more question from me. Is there any significance to the location of where the pyramids are built?
Well, the Great Pyramid was built on solid bedrock, so there's no subsidence. It's not settling or anything else. And most massive structures are built on solid bedrock, including the skyscrapers in New York City, the Great Pyramid, and even hydroelectric dams. Hydroelectric dams, they dig down to the solid bedrock, and then they take dental tools and clean out all the little cracks and that type of thing, and
Yeah.
polish it just nice and everything, and then they build the dam because the foundation was important.
Yeah.
But that's this. It's a technological significance. It's not in terms of any type of religious significance. So
Right.
yeah, it's an excellent place to build a
Yeah.
massive 6 million ton structure where it's
Right.
built.
Yeah. Oh, someone's just put in the comments, which was part of this question, about the alignment of the stars.
What alignment?
There's an alignment of these 3 stars, isn't there, that are supposed to be like representing the points of the pyramid. I don't know without going into.
You don't know about it very much?
Not really. No, I know
Okay.
of it.
There's a
That's
guy.
it.
A guy's written some books, and it's a popular theory that the
Yeah.
Great Pyramid and or other random groupings of pyramids. There's 9 pyramids on the Giza plateau,
Right.
3 big ones and 6 little ones.
Yeah.
Anyway, the idea is that this grouping of stars looks like a grouping of pyramids, and that the vents of the Great Pyramid supposedly point to specific stars, but they're not pointing to those stars. They used to, but they're not anymore. So
Right.
I really think that some of that research is using some rather poor research methods, some correlations that have no causation, and some circular reasoning. The Great Pyramid was built when the vents pointed to those stars, but we know that the vents pointed to those stars because that's when it was built.
Right.
But that's a popular theory.
Yeah.
But just less than 100 years ago, which is not very long ago at all, there was a theory about the Great Pyramid and all of the correlations between it and the Holy Bible. The Great Pyramid, if you do all the math and the alignments, shows us the birthplace of Jesus, and it shows us confirming Bible prophecy with the pyramid inch, and very popular theory. Presidential candidate just recently, Ben Carson, who ran for president here in the United States, was a proponent of the Great Pyramid being some sort of a granary or a storage thing for secret knowledge and that type of thing. So but that all of that's been pretty much rejected because it's, there's no causation for those correlations. It's all just made up.
Right.
And but that's going to be the fate of, I think, what they call the Orion correlation theory, and it's in crisis already because people, the vents every 72 years the sky moves 1 degree.
Right.
So the vents don't point to those stars at all, but people say, well, they used to point to stars.
Yeah.
Those specific stars. So I say, well, if they used to point to that star, is that what makes it significant? Yes. And so then I say, well, with the precession of the equinox, those vents that point up have pointed to thousands of different stars. And they say, well, we just consider those stars because they're special. Well, what makes them special? And is there a feature specific to the Great Pyramid that indicates it has anything to do with Orion? No, there isn't. It's just these correlations are interpretation of evidence. If it's Bible correlations, star correlations, or whatever you want to make up, but they're not evidence. They're interpretations of evidence. So a lot of people have hung their hat on this idea of all of that, but that's a pretty small return on investment. We could do that now. Everybody, let's say everybody in Europe pay $200, and then they'd have enough money to build a Great Pyramid that pointed to something.
Yeah.
But we don't do that because that's stupid. It would be stupid to do that. And it's the same with the geniuses in ancient times. They would rather pump water so their kids can eat every day. They'd rather run powerful machinery. They don't want to worry about what something points to. All hydroelectric dams around the world have passages that point to stars. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
They do. But that's not the intent, if you will. So, it's just a lot of really poor research methods that's being used both in the Great Pyramid Bible correlations and now the star correlations. So I don't know why the Great Pyramid is the subject of so many correlation without causation theories, but it is.
Fair enough. Right. Tino saying it suggested that the Great Sphinx is 50,000 years or even more.
Yes. Egyptology contends that the pyramids at Giza and the Sphinx were all built within several generations of one another, if you will.
Right.
But because of the brilliant researcher and author, Dr. Robert Schoch, who is a geologist and a brilliant person, he studied that Giza area and the Sphinx in particular about water erosion.
Yeah.
And he says the stones are eroded with water, and the last time there was sufficient water in that area was pre-Ice Age. He says about 12,500 years ago, but the dates people have suggested vary, some 50,000 years. So yes, that water erosion indicates that the Sphinx is much older than Egyptologist says it is. And if the Sphinx is older, then that brings the date of the buildings around it, if you will, back older too. It kind of draws them back. So so it's quite interesting. And Egyptology is intractable and stagnated in its ideas. So we'll see. It takes a generation for science to change its mind, if you will. Anthropology embraced the Piltdown skull, discovered right in you guys' stomping ground over there in England. The Piltdown skull. The experts embraced it. There it is. It's fact. There is the missing link. And they wrote their doctoral thesis on it and everything else. And it took a whole generation for that science to say, well, the Piltdown skull's got some file marks on it and it's a forgery. So nobody changed their mind. The generation that accepted it, they just essentially died off. And the next generation knew right off the bat that the Piltdown skull was a forgery. So that's how science, Egyptology and everything else, that's how science advances, is funeral by funeral. So we're waiting for more Egyptologists to die off, and then we'll be able to learn more about ancient Egypt.
Okay. Another question from Joey. So how did they shape the stones? Do you want to know?
Well, the best way to understand about stone carving in ancient Egypt is to know two categories of things. You want to know how it wasn't done, and you want to know how it was done. Well, a good way to find out both of those characteristics of a proposed method is to use the scientific method. Egyptologists say it was done using hand tools, with a hammer and chisel. Find somebody on Earth using a copper chisel and have them make a casing stone, and then that would be demonstrative evidence that would lend credence to what Egyptologists say. But they can't even do that. They can't make a single casing stone. But with that not being able to make one lends credence to the idea that that's how it wasn't done, and that's really good to know. But how it was done is hard to say. It really is. You know, they were geniuses. They may have had some machinery, some technique to cut stone in large scale precision, but exactly how, it's hard to say. And if somebody does say how it was done, the next step after that hypothesis is to provide a demonstration.
Right.
And that hasn't been done either. So basically what we can do is find out how it wasn't done.
Yeah.
While we're trying to figure out how it was done, but not by hand.
Yeah. So it was like process of elimination.
It is a process of elimination. But Egyptology does not eliminate their idea of hand tools and pounders. And it's getting embarrassing for them. I don't know anyone past the 8th grade who has actually looked into it a little bit that believes that large scale precision can be done using hand tools. If you want to accomplish precision in doing something, it doesn't take big back muscles. If you ever go in a machine shop, they got machines and a few workers to make precision. So, it's just one of those things that they have to either put up or shut up. It's not like interpreting a hieroglyph or telling a story about a pharaoh or a mummy or religion. This is like a real world thing,
Yeah.
And you can't even force them to engage in the scientific method. So science has come and go.
Yeah.
There used to be phrenology, and again, it was not very long ago. That's the study of the bumps on people's heads and how it relates to character traits. And there's books about it. You could study it in college and all of that, but that science went away because it couldn't withstand the rigors of the scientific method. Right. And Egyptology is, it's gonna face that same fate.
Yep. Fair enough. Thank you. Got another one from Tim Brennan. Do you have any ideas on the missing capstone, and was it gold?
Okay, that's a great question. The evidence that we have right now, the direct physical evidence, is that there is no capstone. And then that means there either was one or never was one. So, but I would think that probably the capstone was something pretty. It might have been gold plated.
Yeah.
It might have been gold, but it might have just been a pointed rock, the pyramidion, if you will.
Yeah.
But exactly what it's made out of is indeterminable because of the lack of direct physical evidence. So it's hard to say.
Okay, thank you. And last question before the break, another one from Tim Brennan, which is, what are your reflections on ley lines?
Well, I've certainly heard about ley lines, and get on the internet and there's pictures of maps with ley lines and everything. But my reflection, if you will, is to ask this specific questions. Have ley lines ever helped anybody in any tangible way? And I've asked that a number of people, and it's hard to get an answer.
Yeah.
They'll usually say, well, that's where the ancient structures were built. I didn't ask that. Have they helped anybody? Have they cured the sick? Have they fed the babies? Have they protected people from the enemy? Have they helped anybody?
Yeah.
And
I get what you're saying.
An answer. Maybe that person will post how they've helped anybody, but haven't helped anybody.
Deb,
hello.
Have you got anything before we go on a break?
No, I shall try and find something in the next 2 minutes.
Right. So we'll have a quick 2-minute break, and we'll be back once I found the video. See you in a sec.
back in the room?
He's just popped off, so he'll be back.
Popped off. He's popped off.
Well, is that or he's fell off his chair? One of the two.
Yeah. One or other. If that had been me, I'd have fallen off my chair. I know what I'm like.
No, I'd be stuck underneath it. Oh,
probably. Yeah. So if you've got any questions, anybody, just put them in the chat in capitals, and then pick them out and pop them up.
Yeah, we just thought we'd do something different tonight. It's still it's unknown. It doesn't always have to be paranormal or cryptids or UFOs or anything like that.
Yeah.
And to me, it is an interesting subject. So I just want to say welcome to everyone who not said hello to. So we're back with Steve. I'm going to bring him in now. So if you've got any questions, keep up them in caps. Thank you. Hello.
And we're back.
With his magic glasses.
Oh yeah. Gotta have my cheaters.
That's I need some of them.
Older guy, it happens. Can't win.
No.
Older women too, I have to say. I put them down and then say, "Where are my glasses?" They'd be ideal, those.
Oh, I've done that.
Right. I think Andy's got a question for you.
Yeah. So, in relation to, I can't even say the word, hieroglyphics.
Yeah.
And like this, the tablet carvings and all that. What has that got any relevance to the pyramids? Were they put in after they was built, as it was being built?
Well, I can answer that. In ancient Egypt, a lot of the temples have hieroglyphs written all over them. Every single surface has hieroglyphs all over them, inside and out. In the Valley of the Kings, when you go down there and go in all the tombs, which are tombs, holes in the ground, if you will.
Yeah.
Well, you go in there, hieroglyphs written all over everything, every surface. You go to the Great Pyramid, no hieroglyphs. There are no formal hieroglyphs on the Great Pyramid, inside or out.
Oh, I thought that there was.
Yeah, I did.
I always believed that there was.
There are some quarry marks in the relieving chambers that weren't entered until 1838 by Howard Weiss, who used black powder to blow a hole above the king's chamber to go to those. And there are some quarry marks, very informal, almost like graffiti, if you will, but no formal writings inside or out of the Great Pyramid.
Oh, right.
And that's interesting. That lack of writing says a lot. How interesting it is on the engine in your car. Inside the cylinders, there's no writing. It doesn't tell you all about BMW or some leader or anything, because it's a machine. It doesn't need writing. Certainly, there's might be a few part numbers under the hood of your car, but it's not about writing. And the same with the Great Pyramid. It's a machine. It doesn't have writing because it doesn't need writing. It's not there to tell you something at all.
Right. Yeah.
Thank you for answering that. Got another question from Andy Muldoon. Is there any sort of connection between the pyramids of South America and those in Egypt, and also which ones were built first?
Okay, when they were built is beyond the scope of my research, so it's hard to say. Some people do think that there's a connection between all ancient pyramids, and they were some sort of a communication device or energy device or whatever. But it's very tenuous, that idea of a connection. They're certainly much different. South American pyramids oftentimes are made of rubble, if you will, backfill, as opposed to stones, and are certainly much less precise. They have a different angle on the sides, different interior design, and all of that. So I don't see that type of connection. But if you're just a guy and you want to make a tall building, then and if you just have masonry or rubble, it has to be big at the bottom and small at the top. And so that's not not hard to figure out, because they didn't have I-beams and steel. So it was just a natural solution to building a tall building. Big at the bottom, small at the top. So pyramids are like mountains. They're big at the bottom, small at the top.
Yeah.
But mountains, unlike a pyramid, have ears. Didn't know that, did you?
No.
They're called mountain ears.
Oh. Fell for that one.
Oh no. The dad jokes are coming out.
Yeah. I like that. Yeah, but a lot of people say that there's like magical properties in the shape of a pyramid. I always wondered whether that was because it's sort of direct energy.
The idea of sharpening a razor blade or preserving food, meat, or whatever, a few other things, even some improves sexual prowess, if I can say that. But for me, the jury is still out on that. And again, a lot of the pyramid power results, help you sleep better or whatever. It's a small return on investment than the cost of building the pyramid. So it's hard to say. I mean, I'm not going to just say no, but I don't see how that works or is consistent with the Great Pyramid itself.
Right.
I've just thought of a question. Some of the chambers, I'm not sure if it's the Great Pyramid, have certain types of acoustics. Was they purpose built, or was that just happened as it was being built?
Well, every building has acoustics. Some are better than others. There's a guy, and I can't think of his name. He recorded his flute in the Great Pyramid and made a record out of it. But I don't. You can go to these huge hydroelectric dams that are cavernous inside, where the generators are, and you might get an echo or whatever. But I don't think that's a primary purpose for the Great Pyramid. Just because something does something, doesn't mean that's what it was intended to do, if you will. So,
that's why I asked the question the way you did.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure if it was
I don't think that it does any kind of acoustic whatever, like levitation, or what the purpose of any acoustics would be, any more than just singing in there, I guess.
Yeah.
So when the ancient Egyptians were around and these pyramids had been built and everything, what did they do in them?
Well, the Great Pyramid itself, they didn't do anything in it. It was a fully automatic water pump. Water went through all the passages and chambers, and then pumped water. So they didn't do anything in the Great Pyramid. But other pyramids that could have came later might have been the result of what they call a cargo cult. They make, in the South Pacific during World War II specifically, these modern Navy ships would come to these deserted, isolated islands, and the people that lived on the islands would end up worshiping these people that brought cargo. They brought food and spam and radios, and there were airplanes. And when they left after the war, they would make airplanes out of palm branches and radios out of little crates and that type of thing to try to entice the cargo cult gods to come back with their cargo. And it's actually a very growing religion to this day, cargo cults. And so let's say you lived in a civilization that out and back there was this great big pyramid that's always been there. Well, the pharaoh is going to say, I attribute that to me. Yeah. Because I'm a politician, and anything that's good, I'm going to take credit for.
Yeah.
and then the next leader, his kid, will say, well, I want one of them. Let's build one, and it'll be like my tomb or whatever. So I think that some of the other pyramids that are much more primitive could have been the result of some sort of a cargo cult, if you will.
Yeah.
It's hard to say.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you.
I had another question, but it's popped out of my head again. I should write these things down.
I had a question, but because I was listening, it's completely gone. Sorry.
Well, I did write those.
I was just going to write it down as well.
I've also produced 2 documentaries. They're available on YouTube.
Yeah.
And you can mail them internationally, if you will. I don't know how much the postage is, but that's a cost. But DVDs, they're in the, just put them in the computer or whatever and watch them on the big screen. And one is about, this one here is about how the Great Pyramid was assembled.
Yeah.
And this one over here is how the Great Pyramid operated as a water pump. And for the excuse me, for the links, I'm going to drink of water.
Yep.
Just go to our website at thepump.org and but it's interesting. A lot of computer generated animations. It's a very visual process, both the construction and operation of the Great Pyramid water pump.
Yeah.
So I've remembered the question. So the other pyramids next to the Great Pyramid, what were they used for? Were they similar thing?
On the Giza Plateau, there are 3 fairly large pyramids, 2 large ones and 1 not so large, but then about 6. Excuse me, voice is giving out.
You're okay.
I'm dying over here. But the pyramid right next to the Great Pyramid, it doesn't have much of a chamber system at all, and I'm not sure who built it. Could have been built thousands of years after the Great Pyramid, even by a different civilization. So who knows for sure what that pyramid was for. I don't think it was a water pump.
Right, I'm just
but it's hard to say. But not all pyramids are water pumps, and my research is specific to the Great Pyramid.
Right. Okay. I'm just going to put the picture up that's behind us. I'm going to do it as an overlay, so you can have a proper look at them.
Yes. Yeah. The one in the far back is the Great Pyramid. The one that has some casing stones towards the top is the pyramid right next to it, and then you can see the small ones. Called Queen's Pyramids. So that's the Giza Plateau. I've been there, of course.
Yeah.
Fascinating. Amazing. Unbelievable.
Excellent.
How tall are they, Steve?
Well, the Great Pyramid is some people figured it out to the nearest 1/100th of a meter.
Yeah.
Because that's what they're into. But about 450 feet. It depends. A number of layers at the top are missing.
Yeah.
Right.
But about 45-story skyscraper. If you have a tall building in town, that'll give you an idea how tall it is. So
that's a fair height.
Yeah, it's pretty darn tall. And big and massive. That's for sure. It's just a wonder of the world.
Definitely.
That was built, I think, by geniuses in ancient times.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've got one more question from Tino. Do the pyramids contain quartz?
Most of the pyramid stones are limestone. Yeah. The limestone, some was quarried quite locally, and some was quarried across the river in the Tura limestone quarries. So the casing stones are made of an exceptionally high quality limestone.
Yeah.
Excuse me. I'm surviving. But so all researchers, Egyptologists, they say that certainly those stones were put on barges and moved across the river to the construction site. So we are the same there, but we think that the geniuses used water locks, moved the stones right to the building site.
Yeah. So, I can't remember if I've asked you this question. So how long did it take them to build? Do you know?
Well, it's hard to say. The Egyptologists say it was at least 20 years, maybe longer.
Yeah.
But, of all these people dragging stones up the ramp, these big stones and setting them in place. But that can't be done. Right. Can't be done. And Egyptologists can't do it. It can't be done in the real world. To move stones, it hasn't been done. It's just done in stories and by illustrations that Egyptologists have come up with. But using the water locks, they can be used 24 hours a day because the subterranean chamber supplied water to the water locks because it's a water pump.
Yeah.
And 24 hours a day, I think it was, and most people that study the Great Pyramid, this will make their head explode, but probably around 7 years.
Right.
And, they work probably 3 shifts a day.
Yeah.
And have a fourth shift that works everybody else's days off because there's 21 8-hour shifts in a week.
Yeah.
And round the clock, just like they build, anything, automotive cars, when they can get the parts, the factory's open 24 hours a day. I live in a rural area. There's a plywood factory, and it's running right now. So running tomorrow, running tonight.
Yeah, just 24/7.
24/7. And you can't do that with a ramp, even though it doesn't work anyway. So anyway, 7 years.
Right.
Why not?
Well, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
If I was a leader and wanted to build something, I don't want to wait 20 years to get my return on investment.
No.
Yeah.
I want that thing to be irrigating land so my civilization can eat every day. I want that machinery powered so it can do what it needs to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've got another question from Tino. Does the King's Chamber have metaphysical qualities?
If you wanted to, it does. You can get a book that'll say the King's Chamber can do anything you want. And Napoleon spent the night in the King's Chamber that has the coffer, if you will, and he slept in there, and he said the next day, how magical or metaphysical it was or whatever. But I don't think I don't think that it was for ghosts or spirits or for the Pharaoh's soul. So it's a big room in a pyramid building that was used to pump water.
Yeah. Fair dues. So what would your ultimate find be? What are you what's the ultimate thing for you about the pyramids?
Oh, gee, I've never been asked that. Well, for one thing, for more people to find out more about the Great Pyramid. Don't just sit in a classroom that has an Egyptologist telling you what to think, but for people to conduct research and find out for themselves what really works and what doesn't work. And that includes the idea of these correlations and everything else. So that would be that would be wonderful. But they found Nile earth or mud inside the Great Pyramid, sediment. And Herodotus described the Great Pyramid as being like an island surrounded by water and that type of thing. So I just hope more and more people join in on the revolution of ideas that we're involved in a whole host of a whole host of things besides ancient mankind, but medicine, energy, and geopolitics, and a few other things. There's a revolution going on, and people need to join in instead of just being how they already are until they die. So there's a lot going on, and thank God there's people out there that question science, that question Egyptology, that question phrenology, that question spraying DDT. They used to spray that onto babies and kids. But the reason why we don't do that now is somebody questions science. So that would be probably a wonderful thing. We have a foundation from our website, and we are doing research and development to redevelop this ancient high water pumping technology to help our modern but troubled world. So that's just another thing that we're doing, and people can find out about our research from our website.
I keep scrolling the website at the bottom of the page. So if you want to go to Steve's website, there it is now. Steve Meyer's website, http://www.thepump.org.
Right. This might seem a daft question, but if the pyramid was still completely intact, would it still be able to be used as a water pump?
Excellent question. You'd be surprised how different things are from when it was first built till now. It's gone through at least 45 centuries of despoilers and vandals that have destroyed everything they can, in the last 5,000 years. So it's quite a bit different. In ancient times, some of the ancient writers talked about doors on pivots, and some of those elements are gone now. And the King's Chamber ceiling stones, some of the largest stones in the Great Pyramid, are cracked. So the Great Pyramid water pump now is damaged, I think, beyond repair. But Great Pyramid's a historical artifact, so you wouldn't want to make it operational. It's too valuable historically to do that. You'd have to build another facility. It is scalable, so you can make smaller. You don't need a pyramid shape. Use polypropylene containers and PVC pipe and valves, so you can make a smaller one, but power with the pumped water, you could generate electricity. So there's a lot of potential.
So if there was to be one built now, I don't know if there are any water pumps like this that have been built since, would it be cost effective?
Well, I would think so, yes. Just like nuclear power plants are thought to be cost effective, and a few other things. Everything that's built, somebody thinks is cost effective. But yes, I think it would be an alternative to nuclear power or coal generated electricity or even hydroelectricity. So it'd be an alternative power source. But we have to redevelop this ancient technology, and that's what we're doing.
And it would have to be built to the scale of what this Great Pyramid is now.
Well, it would be adapted. You wouldn't need a pyramid shape. You could just use PVC pipe, but it would have to be fairly large scale, not like a tabletop model. There's some scalability issues that a lot of things work in a certain scale, but if you make them bigger or smaller, they don't, if you will. You know all about that. A bee, if you would scale a bee up to the size of a horse, it couldn't fly because its wings, every time you double in size, the wings get twice as big, but the weight is 4 times as much. The weight could quadruple. So there's a scalability issue, even with gasoline engines and, a lot of things. So but it would be maybe 2 stories, if you will, with 6-inch PVC pipe
Yeah.
and some custom fabrication and other things. So, but I know we haven't, but the exact particulars on how all these chambers relate to pumping water,
Yeah.
it is detailed, of course, in my books and documentaries. So it's hard to describe, just in a few sentences. Like, it's hard to describe a V8 engine, but again, there's a lot to this body of research that people can become familiar with.
Right. Just got one more quick question on regarding what you've just said. So, with it being used as a water pump, how and why was it stopped?
Oh yes, excellent. Yeah, the civilization that built it enjoyed the return on investment for that huge project.
Yeah.
But the Great Pyramid broke, if you will. It malfunctioned. We think that malfunction occurred in the king's chamber. Their water normally has an air cushion in the top part of that chamber. That air cushion absorbed into the water and ultimately caused that chamber to be hydraulic, if you will. That's the only chamber that has any structural damage. The stones are kind of spread apart a little bit. Some say there was an explosion in the king's chamber. People can word search that. But it also broke the ceiling stones, and that made that chamber where it's not watertight, and then it ceased to function, and laid there prostrate for who knows how many thousands of years.
Yeah.
Can I just ask, because that's just dawned on me, where was it pumping water from and water to?
The source water, again, is under scholarly debate. Some say the Nile River, some say the ancient Lake Maurice, or a cold water geyser. But I think it was the ancient Lake Maurice, and talk about that in my book quite a bit.
Yeah.
And it pumped water to the point of use. There are some large and deep excavations in around the Great Pyramid. I mean, within steps, huge, like 30 feet square, 60 feet deep. And we think a lot of that held machinery that was powered by the Great Pyramid water pump. And they could have done a lot of things. They could have ran a trompe, which makes compressed air, if you will, without any moving parts.
Yeah.
No shaft, no bearings or anything. And that compressed air can be used to make extremely hot temperatures and extremely cold temperatures with compressed air. You can use compressed air to make high voltage static electricity. So there's a whole host of things that I think that they did with the water, besides irrigation, that made the Great Pyramid part of a science center.
Yeah.
And the yearly flood wasn't good enough to irrigate year round in that scorching desert.
Yeah.
They built the High Aswan Dam, which stopped the yearly flood, but they used that dam to generate electricity and pump water year round, even above the floodplain. So the High Aswan Dam is used to pump water. And one other thing for people to research is that the largest water pump in the world is in the valley of the Nile, and it's called the Mubarak Pumping Station. They've I'm not sure if it's even completed yet, but it's like $500 million to make this water pump in Egypt. Wow. And people say, well, they got the Nile River right there. Why do they need a water pump? Well, the water in the river is worthless for irrigation. You got to get it up on the land. I live in a rural area. Every farm has frontage across with the river, and they pump water out of the river. Yeah. Even though they got water in the river. But so the largest water pump in the world in modern times is in the valley of the Nile, the Mubarak pumping station. Right. And the largest water pump in ancient times was the Great Pyramid. And they both served the same purpose: provide prosperity, generate wealth and that type of thing. So it's interesting to think about. What a wonderful thing to say the Great Pyramid actually helped people. And a lot of people don't say that.
I did notice somebody made a comment earlier about why they built it so far away from the River Nile.
Well, where the Nile was is not necessarily as significant as you would think, because when they move stones on barges, they could have just had a canal from the Nile all the way towards the building site. So with canals, water locks, it's very versatile and adaptable system to move, lift, manipulate, and set in place stones to create this pyramid, which in our video series we show all of that. So it's a versatile method to build tall structures. Modern times, they use those tall, spindly cranes that go way up to build skyscrapers. They have the thing that goes across, and they build skyscrapers, the structural elements, from the bottom up, level by level. Right. Well, the Great Pyramid was built from the bottom up, level by level, but instead of a crane, they used the buoyancy of water to lift from below instead of lifting from above. So, but it's fascinating to think about. A lot of researchers don't even talk about how the Great Pyramid was built. No. People who believe in correlations can't even address it. Can't even consider it. No. Because the way they do research is they want to know what points to something. Well, what points to something doesn't tell you how the Great Pyramid was built. So it's beyond their research capability to even address how it was built. So it's interesting, to say the least.
Question from Lorraine: do you believe that there was a curse put on it, or was it all just hype?
Well, there's supposedly a curse about the King Tut's grave being robbed by tomb robbers, also known as Egyptologists. Yeah. You do know the difference between a tomb robber and an Egyptologist?
No.
An Egyptologist has a college education and a tomb robber don't.
Right.
That's the difference. But they still take stuff out of tombs. So supposedly, if somebody puts a curse on something, it's got a curse.
Right.
So I think a lot of people have cursed me in the past. So yeah, if someone thinks there's a curse about King Tut or the Great Pyramid or the Sphinx, there you are. So
another question via Joe. Wasn't Giovanni Battista Belzoni a famous explorer and engineer in Egypt and blew a hole in the Great Pyramid?
Well, he was an early explorer. I don't know if you'd call him an Egyptologist. I think he might have been also. Don't quote me. One early explorer back then was a circus performer. I kid you not. But yes, they used to use black powder, not dynamite, because it wasn't invented yet. A lot of people say, "Oh, they dynamited," but they used black powder to very much destroy a lot of what they were exploring, if you will. But they had a lust for golden treasures that they could steal and sell to museums, and that's what financed Egyptology the first 100 years. And now it's much more genteel now. Oh, we'll fund a dig, but we'll end up getting the booty for our museum for the paying patrons to buy tickets to come see. So it's a racket. I'll tell you that, it's a racket.
Most things usually are, aren't
they? I live in Oregon here in the United States.
Yeah.
And I hope there never becomes Oregonologists where they study Oregon, because I have a friend who died and he's buried. Don't dig him up.
Yeah, leave him where he is.
Don't dig. Yeah, just leave him where he is. You don't need to dig him up and fiddle with his dead body. If you're an Oregonologist, don't do it. Just leave well enough alone. Oh, we got to get that booty. got to get that gold
Yeah.
from all the pharaohs.
Yeah,
So and, you know, it's just odd.
yeah,
It's really odd, and things don't stay the same. So you know, I think if you're on the wrong side of history, if you think ancient people in the valley of the Nile were primitive at all, and you're on the wrong side of history if you think the Great Pyramid was built to be a tomb. So it takes generations for the truth to come out and be accepted, but that's the way it works.
yeah.
Yeah.
So has there been over the? I mean, obviously, over the years, there's been some erosion or whatever, but has there been significant erosion to the Great Pyramid anyway?
Well, on the outside, there was casing stones, so there wasn't any erosion on the interior stones. Those casing stones were removed around 1000 A.D. after an earthquake, and they reused them to rebuild Cairo. The interior of the Great Pyramid does have some erosion and other features that indicate water was present inside the Great Pyramid. So, and of course, the Sphinx has erosion as well. So there's a profound link between water and the Giza Plateau and water and the Great Pyramid.
Right. Yep. I asked you this one anyway, but Ancient Ruby wants to know what's under the pyramid.
Well, the Great Pyramid is built on solid bedrock, and about 100 feet below the Great Pyramid is a chamber called the Subterranean chamber. It's actually the largest chamber, larger than any inside the Great Pyramid. And we think this subterranean chamber, which is oddly built, some call it unfinished because it's the west end has mounds out of the solid rock that have remained there. And we think that's part of the water pumping process. And that water pump supplied water to allow the water locks to work, and also helps the Great Pyramid water pump work.
Yeah. Sorry, 1 second. I'm just trying to catch up on the comments. So is there any connecting tunnels from the pyramids?
None, no. There's no connecting tunnel between the Great Pyramid or the pyramid next to it with each other. None known between the Great Pyramid and the Sphinx. And there's how can I say this? The people that have access to all of that have very big egos, like Zui Hawass and other Egyptologists, and they would give their eye teeth to find a passage to name after themselves. But no, even with that high motivation, there's no known additional passages that exist between these structures.
Right. So, sorry, going back to, so when it is being used as a water pump, when civilizations changed, do you think that the Egyptians carried on using it for what it was built for originally? Or do you think they just disregarded that completely and used it for their own doings?
I do think that the Great Pyramid was built a long time ago and ceased to function. It broke, if you will, and additional, later civilizations could have repurposed it for whatever they wanted it for. I know some of the pyramids in Egypt have had early Christian burials in them. Some, like 1st, 2nd century burials, but that's a lot past when the pyramids were built, and those burials were used by a different civilization than built those pyramids. So I think a similar thing could have happened. It's like those what are them little crabs that find a shell, and then a hermit crab or whatever, and then they use another creature's shell to part of what they do. So that's what they could have used the pyramids for. But the original use is what I'm focusing on.
Right. So when, like you said, it broke, is there any evidence of anyone trying to repair it?
Yes, that's a
Right.
very good question. I don't get that asked very often. There is an access passage above the king's chamber to get into the first relieving chambers. There's
Yeah.
several relieving chambers. So I haven't been in there, but if you're in there, called Greaves Chamber, I think,
Yeah.
Davison's Chamber. I'm kind of nervous, but I think it's Davison's Chamber. So you go in
Right.
there and you crawl in there. It's not very tall, like 3 or 4 feet, but you're on top of the king's ceiling stones, and people tried to like put plaster or mortar into those stones.
Yeah.
But the pressures are so high, so massive, that you can't fix it. So that might have been done right after it failed.
Right.
But it's not repairable,
Yeah. So
way it goes.
What do you think caused it to break? Do you think it was due to the amount of pressure that it was put under?
Well, in the king's chamber, it had about half full of water.
Yeah.
The other half full of a cushion of air.
Yeah.
And that cushion of air, is compressible.
Yeah.
Well, there in the king's chamber, there is also the coffer, which we think was part of an automatic float system, similar to the float in your toilet, if you will. And what that did was, when that air cushion became absorbed into water, it lessened, and then it made the valve kind of move, and that caused more air to go into the king's chamber. So it has an automatic feedback to operate, but it failed. I think that it failed. That's why the corner of the coffer is busted off.
Yeah.
And we're getting kind of technical here, but then the air cushion was completely absorbed into the king's chamber, and when you bring additional water into that chamber, it damaged it. Old steam cars, when you had water in the cylinder and it kind of cranked over, it would damage the engine because water is not compressible. Yeah. And the term that you don't hear anymore, but it was your steam engine, automotive steam engine, it was hydraulic, if you will.
Yeah.
And so it's a similar type of technical explanation of why the king's chamber is damaged.
Right. So do you think, also, another quick question, sorry. Do you think anyone tried to purposely damage it? Like any other?
I've actually never been asked that question. If it was purposefully damaged.
Yeah.
Wow, that's something to think about. That is an interesting question. I've never been asked that. I would probably say like terrorism or an act of war.
Like another civilization, another supposed country, or say if he was at war with him and.
Gee, off the top of my head, I would say no, because the damage is quite interior, that it was an equipment failure. But I also think that, anything like that is quite well protected. The Queen's Palace, it's a lovely building, quite well protected.
Yeah.
Okay.
Few guns outside.
Yeah. And the hydroelectric dam, the Hoover Dam.
Yeah.
You can't even drive over it anymore. They have they have a bridge, a huge bridge over the Hoover Dam, over the whole valley. And everyone says, "Oh, that's just to help with car congestion." No, that's a security bridge, and you can't do it. And since 9/11, the Grand Coulee Dam in Washington State on the Columbia River, the biggest structure in North America. Before 9/11, they would tour it extensively. You could go way down in there and you could see the big shafts turn and everything. Yeah. But now the tour is very small, very small tour, and they have 20 people, no more than 20 people. They check your ID now. They used to not check your ID, and there's two tour guides.
Right.
They have a guide. They have the one in the front and one in the back, and they each have a gun, and they each have their hand on their gun. That's how important that infrastructure is. So I was looking around and kind of holding back a little bit, and the guy says, "Come on," and there was no come on. As they had their hand on their gun. I mean, it's just weird when before you could tour the whole thing, and it was marvelous. You know, you could feel the whole thing, the dam shape. And I bet when the Great Pyramid operated, you could feel it rumble, you know, like a beating heart almost.
Yeah. Can imagine that.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to ask, no, it's gone again. I've got a brain freeze tonight. I don't know what's wrong.
You're doing
I've
to
lost
me.
it again.
It's not me that brain freeze.
Yeah, it is, yeah. I was going to say, do the Egyptians have much either input or interest in the pyramids or doing anything with them? Or
well, it's hard to say. You know, we just look through a lens of modern times. Certainly, Egyptologists think that the pyramids in general had to do with ancient Egypt, but the Great Pyramid is almost like is distinct from the rest of them in terms of its complexity and precision. So, it's hard to say. It really is. I know that the ancient Egyptians had a lot to do with their temples.
Yeah,
they loved them temples and wrote hieroglyphics all over them, but not as much with.
I was sort of meaning like now, modern times. Are there any sort of people from Egypt that are interested in the pyramids and?
Making a use of them.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, the Great Pyramid is an operational money machine right now. If you count tourist dollars, you know, people come and it's an important. It's when I was there last time I was there, there happened to be a half-track military vehicle. A few guys with camo on and sitting around because tourism is important economically and that type of thing. So the Great Pyramids, the pyramids themselves are all important, and people buying motel rooms, meals, tickets to go to the Valley of the Kings. It's all very important. And there are Egyptologists who study all of that. Very, very different flavors. Some are with the spiritual end, and some are lockstep with traditional Egyptology. So, it's a whole gamut of ideas out there, not just what Egyptologists tell us.
But, just a quick question before you do this one.
All right.
I'm just being nosy now. How many times have you been to the pyramids?
Several. Been over there. We were going to go to Egypt last year, but because of COVID, the tour I was leading was canceled. So hopefully we can get that rescheduled when things open up a little better.
Yeah.
Cool. I've just been nosy with that one.
You don't find anything out if you're not nosy.
Exactly. You don't know.
You don't know. So it's hard to schedule ahead, 6 months ahead. With COVID. So it's but we'll see. Our website has information about our tour that we canceled, and it was like a 14-day tour, a trip down the Nile and everything. But if we can get that going again, people can check our website and maybe join up. It's very limited, like 20 people or so. So it's be very
very intimate.
All the links are going to be in the they're in the description on YouTube anyway. So just click on them and go to whatever part you want to go to. Sorry, Deb, go on.
Question from Ancient Ruby. Are you aware of a light beam activator that goes to the stars? I'm presuming she means from the pyramid.
Well, that's what the Pharaoh's soul went on. He went all up to Orion, and that's where he is now, looking back down on us. and shaking his head with all the wrapping around him. Yeah, no
Yeah.
no light beam. There's no light beam activator that is originally in the Great Pyramid. They do have a light show for tourists at night, and they use the Great Pyramid as a backdrop for a light show. So
Yeah.
that doesn't mean that ancient Egyptians built the Great Pyramid so we can be entertained with this light show. So,
Yeah.
but no, there's no light beam. Sorry
to disappoint.
sorry to break your bubble.
Another one from Ancient Ruby. What do you know about the... Where's that
Oh,
just gone?
sorry. That was me. Sorry.
What do you
About
know
the
about the
obelisk?
obelisk?
Well, there are obelisks, and they are long, single stones, big pointy things, and they are beautiful to look at, and that type of thing. Some say that they were antenna, or that they transmitted communications around the world, and that's fine to say that, but I don't know how that works. But they are part of the architecture, state architecture back then, and when you stand by an obelisk, you look up and you think, oh well, whoever made that obelisk is in power.
Yeah.
The same with the statues of Mammon, that those great big two twin statues.
Yeah.
And it's state architecture, and helps you know who's boss, if you will. And that's what I think anyway.
Yeah.
Right, I've got
Andy.
another question. So, after the pyramid was built, do you know of any other parts that were added to the pyramid through the civilizations that came after?
Not the Great Pyramid. It was fully functioning and fully operational machine. It's like a car when it came off the production line. They didn't have to add anything. Certainly, people have taken from the Great Pyramid a lot of the interior mechanisms, doors on pivots, and other things. So no, it's the Great Pyramid.
Nothing was built internally or in any of the chambers since.
Well, the only thing that's really left inside the Great Pyramid now is the coffer, but it's too big to steal. You can't get it out of the doorway. Right. So it was put in there when the Great Pyramid was built, before the ceiling stones were set in place. But the coffer had a lid, and there were some other mechanisms, doors on pivots. There's the antechamber between the Grand Gallery and the King's Chamber, and it has these large slots, but there's no sliding stones in those slots, so they've been removed, and a whole host of other things, the casing stones as well. So it's much different.
People taking stuff rather than putting stuff in there.
Yeah, the Great Pyramid is a puzzle with quite a few pieces missing, and researchers have to understand what's there and try to recreate what was intended to be there when it was originally built.
Okay. No, sorry. Ancient Ruby's just put the obelisk is one of the most not talked about and is very important to the star people.
Good. I'm glad the star people like the obelisk. That's really, I don't blame them, and all obelisks point up to the sky, but they're not pointing to Orion. But the star people, good for them.
Okay. One more question, Umbraman. What does Stephen know of the massive doors of the pyramid that could be moved easily with one hand?
Okay. Well, there's no massive doors in the Great Pyramid, so there's anecdotal writings about a door on the front of the Great Pyramid, kind of up high, that would move. They had doors on pivots, and certainly there's some legends and stories, but the exact direct physical evidence has all been removed. So it's hard to say with what accuracy those stories are. Even the location of that door that he's talking about
Yeah.
is under scholarly debate. Some say it was right in on the casing stones,
Yeah.
so you couldn't see the entrance. Other people think it was down the descending passage a ways. So there's anecdotal stories written in ancient times that give an idea that it might be either place. So it's hard to tell.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm just checking. Sorry, I was just looking if there's any more questions.
No, I think we've done the questions.
Have you got any more, Deborah?
I've got no. I know I haven't got any more. I've had mine answered.
Ooh.
Ooh.
Yeah. I did have another one. I started writing it down.
I should do that because my memory's shocking as you're talking. It's like they're popping into the head and then they pop back out again.
Can't find it. I've started writing stuff down. I've got like 10 pieces of paper in front of me and nothing's finished. Because as you're talking, it's like, oh, I've got that one. And then someone else.
I appreciate that. There's a lot to the research, you know, a different idea about the Great Pyramid being a technological device that actually did something. And it's kind of a fresh perspective instead of saying, oh, it's part of a death cult and that put the Pharaoh's mummy in, but the original builders didn't know what they were doing and it didn't work very well. The long open passages didn't work very good. So, but you know, that's one way to look at it. But another way is that the builders were geniuses and made a massive infrastructure to help themselves and the lives of their children, and that makes more sense to me.
Like Joe's just saying there, it's a lot to take away and think about, which is true.
It is, you know. We all have to resolve what we've been told by Egyptology, and I think Egyptology is the biggest hindrance to understanding ancient Egypt.
Yeah. One probably last question from Rick Allen: do Egyptian religions have an end times?
Oh, that's a super good question. I hope they do. So,
mind you, the Mayans
when you say Egyptian religions, I mean, there's a lot of, I'm assuming you mean ancient Egyptian religions.
Yeah,
you know, there's Jews and Christians in Egypt, and they're religious. So that would be an Egyptian, or an Egyptian person anyway, being religious. You know, I don't know. You know, gods are like sciences; they come and they go. You know, a lot of the gods that they worship, you know, people just go to take selfies at these temples when years ago, you know, people tithed, if you will, the temples and that type of thing. So I don't know about religion of, but I do know this: religion didn't move the stones of the Great Pyramid.
Yeah,
didn't do it. But the Great Pyramid had a huge return on investment. Now Notre Dame over there in France, it was a big, expensive building, and it was a religious building. But one of its return on investments was people tithed when they came to that building for 800 years. Pretty good return on investment, I would say. So, you know, a big, expensive building, big return on investment. Great Pyramid, big return on investment.
Yeah, all to do with the money.
I would say, but prosperity, leisure, industry, and all of these things. So it's an alternative, ancient but high technology that needs to be redeveloped in our modern but very troubled world.
Yeah, true. We have got another question actually from Andrew. Are there any other materials in or around the pyramids that could point to what type of machinery other than a water pump were being used?
Well, there's a lot of stone associated with the Great Pyramid. There's also a bonding agent between the casing stones and some of the other stones that's stronger than the stone itself. And that's a material that indicates they really wanted the stones to be watertight. But I don't know, in or around the, I'm sure there's some mummy dust somewhere that, but no, I think the Great Pyramid itself was a water pump, and it was a wonderful machine. People adored it,
Yeah.
revered it because of what it did. People adore their cars.
Yeah.
Or I really love my computer because
Yeah.
I'm wrote a book, several books on it.
Yeah.
And it's we love our technology, and us in the West, we're inundated with infrastructure. So it's like it's like a fish in water. It's just. But in let's say Africa, where they can't afford gas powered water pumps built in the West, and they can't afford a hydroelectric plant financed by probably communist China, then they go without.
Yeah.
But if you want to appreciate infrastructure, go without infrastructure. And it's just all the change in the world. And that's why we have leisure instead of our backs all wore out, because we have machines, forklifts to lift stuff. We have vehicles. We don't have to drag stuff.
No,
we have water locks that get stuff from China all the way here to the Western United States, so we can have all of our goodies.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. Andy, last question.
Yes. Right. I've remembered it and I wrote it down so I didn't forget.
Okay.
So, with all this technology that was lost about how the building of the pyramid, do you think then that there was the civilizations that moved, each civilization, do you think there was a gap of no one living there at any point? Or was it a continuous flow of...
I appreciate what you're saying. Community. I think that I'm a catastrophist, which history has been punctuated by a number of catastrophes.
Yeah.
And I don't know if no one lived there for a while, but I think society broke down several times. Yeah. Even in Pharaonic Egypt, there were several periods of what do they call it? Period, not of confusion, but there were several periods that through the dynasties where they were not as organized as they should be politically. But yeah, I do think that that's just some civilizations probably fell, and and their understanding and high technology fell with them.
Yeah.
And that could happen again if we have a I hate to say this, with the things going on east of you guys over in Ukraine, but if there happens to be a thermonuclear pulse, a nuclear bomb that goes off in the air, then everything that we own doesn't work anymore. Cars and phones, because a thermonuclear pulse destroys integrated circuits.
Yeah.
And then we're back to the Stone Age. And people are the same, but that's the difference between now and other times, is we have this lavish infrastructure that we live in. And and that over there in Great Britain, the canal era.
Yes.
With they made these canals, and then England was able to get coal to for heating and everything else. People say, "Oh, they don't need to build water locks." Well, back then, they could have just dragged coal from the coal mines all the way into England, but they had a brain.
Yeah.
They built water locks and created wealth, prosperity. So it's and it's an amazing thing to consider our ancestors to be that advanced, and that's what I want to give glory is to them in this humble way.
Yeah. Well, that's it, Steve. The 2 hours is up.
Oh, already?
Yeah, no, it goes quick.
So fast.
So thank you so much for coming on. Really enjoyed that.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it. Wonderful hosts.
You're very
And,
welcome.
keep me in mind for another show. If you know another host that might want a guest, let
Definitely,
them
yeah.
know. And all the links for my information, books and DVDs are at the website.
Yeah.
All below.
So, thank you, Deb. Thank you, Joe, for moderating. Thank you, everyone, coming in on the chat and asking questions. It's been a great night again, as always. So that's it. Until next week. Next week, who've we got on next week, Deb?
Oh, don't ask me now. I haven't even looked.
Steve,
I've had an injury today. I've been
never knows
distracted.
who's on the week after. I need to replace her. She's
I
not
know.
very good at this. We've
I'm
got
hard to come back.
Jay Austin's on next Friday.
Yes.
Yeah. So, So we've got
Lovely.
Jay Austin, and the week after that is our first live investigation of this year.
Yes.
Which will be at Kingsthorpe Cemetery, and I cannot wait.
Love that place. I don't even live near it, and I love it.
It's like 2 miles, not even 2 miles away from where I live. So.
Oh wow, that's interesting.
And we've had a lot of activity going on there.
Definitely.
So even when I've been there and I've not been doing a live stream, I go out and do a bit of research there as well. And there's stuff going on all the time. So so a massive thank you, everyone, and we'll see you next week, same time.
Take care. Don't be afraid.
Thank you again.
Thanks,
No
Steve.
worries. Thanks, Steve. See you all soon.